Hello and welcome to this episode of Demystified as we explore home cooking in a modern world. I'm Linda and I'm here with my friend Paul.
Topics McGowan.
Oh, I knew you were going to do that. I knew it. No, don't call me that.
No, Topics McGowan. Well, I had to go out for a couple of hours and I said to Linda before I left, right, you've got to come up with a topic for today's podcast. I don't know what we're going to talk about. And you tried to pre-warn me, but I told you that's not in the rules. So we never usually do that, so we don't know what we're going to talk about. Well, and one of us will bring a topic to the table. Generally it's you, so you reckon you've got two, so I'm now going to name you Topics McGowan. That's it.
And as I said, you may decide to wrap this one up really quickly. But one thing that we've never talked about, and I know it's a bit controversial at the moment, because there's a whole lot of reasons why, and it's about restaurant prices.
Oh, I like controversial.
Because a lot of people, are sort of, we're having conniptions in Australia at the moment because there's headline news. It's like we're back in the 1960s, but headline news, a lettuce was $12, a cabbage was $19. And these prices are unheard of. And generally speaking, I would say that food in Australia can be quite expensive compared to sometimes around the rest of the world, but either way, no problem. But these prices are exorbitant and they're making headline news, and to the point that here McDonald's, big restaurant chain, has replaced lettuce on their burgers reputedly with cabbage, which I thought was apparently because they were easier to get cabbages than lettuces. Now I wasn't sure that was a furphy or not, but it did lead me to think, people generally don't understand the cost of food in restaurants and why some prices seem hefty.
In your wheelhouse, the accountant's wheelhouse.
Well, I know that when I met you all those 200 years ago, I was amazed at the time, and I did bring this up, that why am I tipping the waitering staff? Well, when I'm tipping the waitering staff is the food, which is really the kitchen.
That's how you
that's how you
interpret your tip. So let's not dive into that.
No. But then it did lead me to think. But then you also do tip for really good service and so on. But I will forgive bad service for great food, just generally speaking. But either way, but people don't generally know. And there's a new little bar opened up in the corner from us at home, which I'm really keen to get into one time, called Shabu Shabu, and they were sort of commenting on some of the...
shabu.
I don't know, it could be.
Because that's a dish.
No,
shabu.
This is a... I don't know, actually. Yeah. Now I'm going to go past it. But either way, but it does sort of lend... And people do talk about the prices of things, the prices of drinks, the prices of food, and whether they're high or not.
Yep.
And I thought that's really an arbitrary thing, because most people don't understand the work that's involved, the cost of everything.
Yep.
And now I'm handing it right over to you, my beautiful friend, to say...
Yeah, well, okay, so it's been a while since I've had to concern myself a lot with that. So I get a little bit of free rein in my day job when I do host dinner events. Now, I do cook within a budget of sorts, right? Yeah. But not to the same degree as what I did when I was working in a restaurant, where you do, full analysis of every single component of the dish and the entire dish itself,
yes.
And you would be very happy, but you want it broken down into 33%.
Yes.
Right? You want a cost of 33%, and you want some labour, and then you want the profit at the end.
Hopefully.
Now, a lot of the time it doesn't work out like that, and a lot of the time you will put menu items on that cost you a lot more. They're
called loss leaders.
Yes, there you go. But you make up for it with other items on your menu that are much higher margin gainers. Okay? So, in essence, the thing that, and not everyone is like this, right? And so we make assumptions about what people think about the price of food. I remember when being a very young apprentice a long time ago, and there's a very famous Italian restaurant and restaurateur in Melbourne at the top of Burke Street, Guy Grossi, and has had a restaurant there for eons. And I remember, and this is a very long time ago, I remember there was a massive controversy because he put out a main course that was $50. And that was $50 is $50, right? It's not a small amount of money. And for a main course dish, at that time, and we're talking probably late 90s, very early 2000s, $50 main courses were unheard of. Like, at a good restaurant, you'd be in the $36 to $38 bracket. And I think a lot of people have, to a degree, moved on from it, but some haven't, right? The thing about a plate of food in a restaurant is that it is more than the sum of its parts, okay? So when you look at what you get on your plate, obviously there's a level of skill that's involved with producing it, hopefully, if it's good. Then there's the actual cost of the ingredients, and that's what most of us see, right? We look at it and we go, okay, that, and often, and I hear people on the, even today I heard someone talking on the radio about another very famous restaurant, talking about big plates and small portions of food that cost you a fortune. But we generally look at the ingredients on the plate, and not all of us, but some people will make a rough calculation in their head and go, well, I could have made this myself for X, and I'm paying
Y
and Z and W, right?
Yeah.
For the privilege. So what a lot of people don't understand is that that plate of food contributes to, obviously, the broader profit and loss and budget of a restaurant. Now, within that plate of food, generally you try and split out food and beverages in restaurants, okay? So they kind of have their own micro enterprises, if you like, micro businesses, because, to be honest with you, restaurants make their money off drinks. Always have, always will. And the funny part is that quite often people will come at that a lot easier than they will at coming. So they'll pay a lot more for their drinks than they will for their food.
Okay.
Which is kind of funny, right, when you think about it. This is ongoing back a ways, right? Because I haven't been in restaurant kitchens for a while now.
But it is in your living memory.
Be pushing 10 years, but nonetheless, like,
has it been that long?
Be close to that long.
Wow, okay.
So the markup on a bottle of wine in a restaurant, minimum, is about 130%.
So if you're buying a really cheap bottle of wine...
Right,
wow.
So 130%, that's a really good money maker, okay? And the funny thing is that people could probably they pick out a bottle of whatever, and they could probably go to the local bottle shop and see the same bottle, the same vintage, grab it themselves, and pay 130% less, right? But because you're out, you're doing it, it's fine, you just come at it, and that's it, right? You can't put 130% on top of a plate of food. It's impossible. It's nigh on impossible. Which is why a lot of restaurants now will do degustation menus. It's a really good example of how to potentially make a little bit more money out of food. Individually plated main courses, as an example, are very hard to make money from. Very hard. Because that plate of food has got to pay for the food and ingredients themselves, the chefs, the dishwasher, the kitchen hand, the upkeep of the kitchen, the cleaning of the kitchen, the tea towels, the equipment that breaks down, the guy that comes and changes the grease filters on the range hood, like the oil in the deep fryer, even though it's not used in that dish, like it pays for every single component, the plate itself, the cutlery, the linen, like that plate of food has to make a contribution to that. So realistically, like if you looked at what a plate of food should be priced at, if you did a comparison to a bottle of wine, like you could have your bottle of wine at 50% markup and your food at 50% markup, but every main course would be like $60-$80 at least.
And people aren't going to pay that.
And people aren't going to pay that because they don't see the value in it, right? So they're happy to fork out for a bottle of wine at 130% markup, but that's how restaurants make money. I promise you, that's how restaurants make money, because it's a single-use item. You need very little as far as storage. You don't need to put it together as such. Yeah, so it doesn't involve an entire process, an entire team. And remember, in a lot of kitchens, you may well have a small kitchen team of 2, but you might have a kitchen team of 10. or 20. So those bigger restaurants, like the big restaurants, let's say, and we'll just pick one out of a hat, let's say Rockpool, it's a big restaurant. There's a lot of staff there. You could say Donovan's, you could do any of the big restaurants that have been well heeled by Melburnians for eons, right? There's a lot of wait staff there. There's a lot of chefs there. They've got their processes down pat, but I would guarantee you that they make the majority of the money off selling wine or beer, grog, alcohol, drinks, because it doesn't require the storage. It requires very little, which is why pubs make money. Because what do pubs do?
All about the beer and all about the alcohol and less about the food.
Yeah. Because people are willing to pay more
and just
for
go
alcohol.
and drink.
And I mean, one of the first
people
that I worked for was a very long time ago now, a publican at a very famous pub in Fitzroy. And he was very near and dear to my heart. I loved this man to death. His name was Chick, and he owned the Rainbow Hotel in Fitzroy. And I started cooking there, and he wanted to open up his kitchen. And one of the first things he said to me, he said, "Paulie," that's what he used to call me, Paulie boy. He said, "Paulie boy, just don't forget something. We are here to sell piss." And that was his...
Oh, for those people who don't know what that word...
That means alcohol. That's the slang term for alcohol in Australia. But we are here to sell grog, right? Yeah. And that was his thing, because that's how he made money. That's how he made money.
And that's why they have bands.
And if you look at... so I can tell you that out of a keg of beer, you get 175 pots of beer. Now, back in the day, this is a long time ago now, but I think a keg of beer was somewhere around the $200 mark, right? Now, you're the maths expert here, but a pot would cost you $3, and you get 175 pots.
Got my calculator handy, 525.
Yeah, so you get 50% markup. You're getting 50% profit. And all you've had to do is get some glassware and a dishwasher.
It's more.
Yeah. So, now my sums might be wrong, right? But I know 175 pots comes out of a keg. And that's why pubs have stayed open for as long as they do. Now, I mean, a lot of them do pokies now and various other things. But people will come more at the drinking alcohol side of things because it makes money.
Okay. So
it's not that restaurants don't make money, and you can make money off some food and some dishes, right? So, and that's why you will see restaurants, clever restaurants, you'll see them, like if you take as an example, and I'm just going to use one particular cut of meat as an example, right? So you take an eye fillet, this thing's tapered, and you'll get some nice steaks out of the middle of it, but then you've got a few offcuts here and there, and a bit of scrap, and a bit of this and a bit of that. But generally it's a pretty good yield item. It's expensive, and you can charge a lot for it. So you can charge a lot for your fillet steaks, right? And that's great. You probably break even, give or take. Maybe make a little bit of money on top. But all those offcuts and scraps, you turn them into something and you create a dish out of those, that's almost pure profit. So that's where kitchens get clever, right? So rather than buy filleted fish from the fishmonger, and we've been down this road before, where you pay a premium because someone has done the work for you, restaurants will buy whole fish, and then all of a sudden they've got a carcass there and they can make a soup out of it, let's say. Right?
Or stock, or whatever.
Yeah. And then you add some rice and you've got a risotto, okay? Yeah. But you're getting multiple use out of single ingredient, creating multiple dishes, which then makes what the main core part of the item that you have chosen to cook cost less, because all of those other little bits that you've built around it have reduced the cost of it. So you're getting closer to a better margin. Does that make sense?
Totally. No, it does totally. And that leads me to my second question then, which was also about restaurants. When you go to a restaurant and you see chef specials versus sort of the standard, menu that they have, are those chef specials really a special, or are they just, like, I always try to imagine that maybe the chef, that's a food they have to do on a regular basis because their patrons love You know, the chicken schnitzel or the beef, you know, with chips or whatever.
Yeah.
But these things here are what's in season, hopefully, what's in season, and what they've wanted to make for themselves, and in being inspired by, and therefore they're
pretty hopeful sometimes, but
worth a try.
So it very much depends on.
Or is it just marketing?
No, it's not. It very much depends on where you eat, where you choose to eat. I, as a famous food writer,
John Weclome.
No, Matthew Evans.
Okay.
Said never order seafood on a Monday, which is still true to this day, by the way, because that seafood will, at minimum, be from Saturday. Very rarely do you get super fresh seafood on a Monday. It's a bit different these days, but nonetheless. As far as specials go, it's a bit of a funny one. So, quite often, if you have a very tried and true restaurant that doesn't change their menu that often, and so, like you say, they go through the chefs go through the process, and that's the menu. And I've worked at restaurants like that. One very well-known one for a long period of time, and the menu very rarely changed. And if it did, it was like 2 or 3 dishes once every 6 months. But it was a French bistro, and they wanted the bistro classics,
and they were great. And they were great.
Yeah, right. So the specials were always where I worked. What was in season? Absolutely. So if something new came into season, we used to love when zucchini flowers started coming in, or soft shell crabs, or different types of fish. So you get to play a little bit. I've always written when I worked, generally, and barring the first restaurant where you and I, barring one of the restaurants where you used to come where I worked, but I would generally never actually have set fish dishes down on the restaurant. I would always have like a fish of the day type proposal on the, because it also gives you freedom to build a dish around whatever's good or relatively cheap as well at the time. And generally you would see a fish of the day as on the specials board, if you like. So I think the busier the restaurant, the better chance you are, or the better luck you have of ordering a special that's going to be good, and it's not going to be something recycled. If you see very similar ingredient patterns in the menu that you do on the specials board, it means they're trying to push something. I would suggest it means they're trying to push something out.
Okay.
So if you walk into a restaurant and they have scallops with cauliflower puree and, I don't know, asparagus, right? And that's the menu dish. And then on the specials board, you've got scallops with lemon butter and chorizo sausage and whatever. I'm not ordering scallops that day.
Because they've ordered too many and
they're
not selling them, and so they've got them now in
abundance.
Okay.
And so I would
That's a hot tip, everybody.
Yeah, I would tend to look at the ingredients on the specials board, and you generally get a little bit of detail, right? Because most menus these days are written as just a list of ingredients.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see snapper, this, that, done, right? There's very little anymore of finished with a beurre noisette of, mustard and sage. You don't see those descriptors anymore much.
No.
So you'd see ingredients lists. So when I look at specials boards, and the funny thing is actually recently when I was up in Sydney, I ordered off a specials board. Because I actually read through the menu and I was like, oh yeah, it looks alright, and then I saw something totally different that had nothing to do with their menu, and it was an Italian restaurant, and there was very little lamb on the menu, if any, and they had a lamb ragu pasta, and I thought, well yeah, that's what I feel like, so I ordered that. There's no way, if they have lamb anywhere on their menu, if it was a lamb rack, it'd be different, but you're not making a ragu out of a lamb rack. So they're the things that I look at, and I went, no, they've ordered shoulders in or whatever, cheap cut, good profit margin, and it's something that they've got there that they don't usually cook. Why not?
And how was it?
Yeah, it was good. not as good as mine, but it was good. But yeah, specials boards, I would, if you see a lot of ingredient overlap in what's on the specials board as to what's in the menu, yeah, tread lightly.
Well, thank you. And just a final comment about that. I know this is not going to apply to you, but so this is more of a comment than a question. But you know me, and I, when it comes to food, there are places I go to that once I've been for a little while and gone through their menu, I love something and I want to have that.
Yeah.
You're not that kind of person.
No, I order something different every time. So, that being said, like, if you remove COVID and if I think back a little bit to the previous job I was in, when I was travelling a little bit more, I would certainly visit. So I would spend a bit of time in Queensland, right? And I would be in a place called Fortitude Valley, and that was great, and that's where most of my work was, and and there was I think it was a French little bistro that was there, and every time I had to go up there for a work trip, I would go there. Now, I wouldn't necessarily order the same food, but 9 times out of 10, if I'm eating by myself, travelling by myself, I do tend to treat myself a fraction. And I will start with oysters and steak tartare as a minimum. But I think I probably went there at least 2 or 3 times, maybe 4. I had something different pretty much every time. Because that's just, I see there's no joy for me in the repetitiveness of that.
No, whereas for me who doesn't have your skills, but for me, because, and this is where we live, we're absolutely spoiled with choice. So our question is not often which restaurant you want to go to. Yeah. It's what do you feel like eating? What have you got a hankering for?
Yeah.
And it'll be, I feel like Angie's Bistro's fried rice with pork belly, or I feel like this over here.
Yeah.
And you tend to go to that restaurant for those things because there's so much to choose from.
Yeah.
Here, where we live, we're just spoiled.
Yeah, super spoiled.
It might be different if, you know.
I don't know that there's any, like, I think I can think back to, like, a few particular dishes that I've had on occasions where I would 100% go back just for that dish.
Okay.
But there'd be only like 2 or 3. It was that good that I just could not go back. But the funny thing is when you work in restaurants that have a menu that is sort of long lasting, you know, so where I used to work, Bistro Thierry, like the menu was, you know, yes, a few items change as far as seasonality and stuff like that, but the core principle of the menu, like at least 75% of it, has been the way it has been for 15 plus years. And the funny thing is that when you work in a restaurant like that, you get to know, there's a lot of regulars, right? You know, regular people come in, but they have the same thing all the time. So people do eat like that, and that's fine. Good on them. And every now and again, they might go, oh, you know, I'll try something different. But the funny thing is quite often is that for every 5 times they come in, on the 6th time they might try something different. But the 7th time that they come in, they'll go back to their favourite. Like, they very rarely stretch that imagination that far. But that's why some of those restaurants work. And I mean, that's how we go back to the first topic when you talk about costs, you know, and understanding that sort of stuff. Restaurants like that find a really nice middle ground because they know exactly what they need to produce, how much of it they need to produce. They know their costs all the time because you're not swapping and changing menus and ingredients all the time. And you can, as you would know, like anything in accounting, right, if you streamline everything and make it a little bit more financially viable, it's going to be better long term.
Totally. Yeah.
So it works to people's benefit.
Yeah, and not only that, when you go in, when you walk in the door, you make a booking there, you walk in the door, you know you're going to have a really high quality food. There's no surprises.
Yeah,
you know what you're
going to get, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's great. You know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And it's that principle.
But then also, like, you know, which is why I would prefer to, you know, I can, the last few times that I've been in Sydney with my colleagues, and they said to me, oh, you know, let's go out for dinner or something, we always go to the same place. And I'm like, dude, we're in Sydney, like there's a mecca of food here, but they always seem to want to go to the same place. Now it's good, it's great, it's excellent, there's nothing wrong with it, the food is always outstanding, but it's not, it's horses for courses, right? That's just not me. I'd rather go explore, like I said a couple of weeks ago, the second best pizza, if not the best pizza I've ever had in my life, was in the middle of Auckland in the tiniest restaurant out of an electric oven. If I didn't walk in there, how would I know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I always encourage people to give everywhere a go. Not everything's going to be golden and shiny and perfect all the time, and you might be paying a bit too much for what you think is worthwhile, but you know, if you want variety in restaurants, the only way to do it is by supporting them. And
remember also that food prices everywhere are going up.
Yeah.
And if we're paying $12 for a lettuce,
and McDonald's are no longer serving lettuce, which
I haven't had it. I haven't been, so I don't know for certain. But the prices, it was on the news. So when would the news not tell you the truth?
Oh, conspiracy theorist.
I know, but thank you for that. Well, thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
There we are. Well, have a good weekend, everybody. Have a nice weekend cooking if you're going to be cooking. And till next time, take care. Happy cooking. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this podcast as we explore home cooking in a modern world. We'd love you to subscribe, and for more information, please go to our website, cookingwithsteam.com.